sorry, this 6:32 p.m. We apologize for the tardy start of our council meeting for June the 19th. And we will rise for the playing of the national anthem. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda, and the motion reads that the agenda be adopted as circulated, but we do have an amendment. There is a bylaw on the docket for this evening, but the report was not included with the package that went out. However, the report has already been seen by council at committee of the whole, and it's in regards to a zoning bylaw amendment SR-125-33-327 Taylor Road West. So we discussed it at committee of the whole, but the report is being sent out and the agenda being republished again for the public consumption. So the clerk has identified that error and we are correcting it, but just so that nobody thinks that we've got something on here that hasn't been already seen by council. Okay. So the motion is moved by Brian Maybe and seconded by Mr. Jameson that the agenda be adopted as amended, if that's okay. Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next item is declaration of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof. Does anybody have an interest to declare? Go ahead.
I've sent in the form. I don't know if this is the moment, but I'll have to excuse myself when you're discussing road grants.
Okay, and I will have to do the same, unfortunately. So that's two of us out. Go ahead.
Thank you, worship. Action required items 10.1 planning report SR-121-23 short-term rentals.
Okay, so Mr. Lackey has identified 10.1. So we'll have him leave the room at that point in time. And myself and Councillor Jameson will be leaving the room based on 10.8 operations report SR-128-23 private road grant. Any other declarations of interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the in-camera session, which there is no in-camera session this evening. And number 6 is consent agenda. So the adoption or receipt of meeting minutes. So the motion comes forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the May 8th, 2023 council meeting minutes, May 10th, 2023 special council candidate interviews meeting minutes, May 17th, 2023 special council Councillor Ward 2 appointment meeting minutes, May 18th, 2023 special council declaration of Councillor Ward 2 office meeting minutes, and the June 5th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, and that the June 5th, 2023 Public Planning Act meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, and that the April 25th, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes be received and filed. Discussion on this motion. Any errors or omissions in any of those minutes? I know there was a plethora to go through. I see no hands, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item. Is moved by Councillor maybe seconded by Councillor Fody, that the council approve the staff report as recommended at the June 5th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. So is there any? There's only one report, and that is the zoning bylaw amendment. Go ahead, Madam Planner.
Thank you. Through you, if I could just add that since the public meeting and the previous discussion on the application, we have received a legal opinion to confirm that all rights of access by the surrounding property owners will not be impacted by the proposed lot additions and zoning amendment.
Thank you for that clarification. Does anybody have a question regarding that? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next motion is moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the information items be received and filed. There's a long list of information items. If there's anything that anybody wants to ask before we move forward, go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to discuss 9.2.
Go ahead.
So this is the paramedic one, which was quite an interesting read. It does show our ongoing issues with our medical care, which later on in our meeting, we'll be discussing about physicians. So, you know, this added cost to all of us is strictly because there are lack of funds or lack of services within the hospitals. And this one really points to that, where they're left on their stretchers for a long period of time. And this isn't something new. I can refer back to 2016 when I sat on a stretcher for a couple hours with 4 others ahead of me. So, you know, it isn't something new, as the report actually did indicate a little bit too. But I think we need to possibly put pressure on our provincial and federal governments to increase the medical grants or monies to our hospitals, paramedics, doctors, whatever we need to do to try to pressure this group to help us get over this shortage of medical expertise, the lack of or this wait time that is happening. So I do feel that we possibly at some point could send a letter asking for more support, you know, and I know the county's doing the same thing, but maybe it takes the whole municipal electorate to add their voice in letter to the government so that they actually see that we are very aware of this issue and we need to expedite trying to get something done to help those who show up at the hospital and need that service quickly. And to that point, I know of another person who actually tore the ligaments off their knee. It took them a week to get it operated on. Way too long. In our type of medical services that we have nowadays. But it comes back down to the doctors, the nurses, everybody who's in that hospital. We need to get back to having enough to service the population we have. And with an aging population that is lasting longer and a bigger population happening or an increase of population, we do need to try to put pressure on these groups to do more to help us get through this. Thank you.
So I would suggest, Councillor, maybe if you want to put something like that in writing, it could come forward as a notice of motion for an endorsement from the council. Just to further explain the EOWC Paramedic Service Partial Refresh Report, This stems from a cumulative cost to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville upwards of $1 million due to our paramedics needing to go into the city of Ottawa to provide service, which the paramedics don't have a problem with. However, it's been surmised that the city of Ottawa is short paramedics, and we're basically helping them prop up their system. The council for the city of Ottawa asked for 40 additional paramedics in last year's budget, and we're only given 14. And I think there's more of a systemic problem that needs to be dealt with. And so the whole purpose of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus going forward is that they are banding together with the County of Renfrew, the County of Lanark, SD&G, and the City of Cornwall, who provide service for SD&G, to have a unified voice in the City of Ottawa, because it's not just the municipality of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville and the taxpayers contained within that are footing this bill, but all of Eastern Ontario. There are many nuances to this issue. Offload times is part of it, but more importantly, it's balancing the staffing requirements, which they can't seem to graduate enough paramedics fast enough. It's like every other medical profession. But I am very encouraged that the warden for the UCLG, along with the chair of the EOWC and the other regional governments, are coming together to find a solution and a way out of this. So just for more information for your own digestion, if you will. Any other discussion on any other information items before we receive them and file them? I have Councillor Gorell, and then I've got Councillor Aki, and then I'll go back.
And thank you through your worship. On 9.3, unfortunately, my computer wouldn't open up the letter. And so it was a little vague to me, but I did open up the, it looks like letter of support. And I wonder if someone could just fill me in on, we at this township have a pretty robust code of conduct. So I guess I'm asking, is this because all of Ontario does not have a consistent code of conduct? Is that what's being asked for in this letter?
I'll let the clerk answer that.
Through your worship, thank you for your question, Councillor Gorell, and I do apologize about the attachment on the agenda. So we did receive this resolution that goes over the legislative amendments to improve municipal codes of conduct and enforcement. So on May 31st, 2023, the government voted down Bill 5, which is stopping the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. And the committee, the Women of Ontario Say No, are calling on municipalities to be active and have an engaged voice with our own workplace safety and that of the municipal staff by joining 156 other Ontario municipalities in supporting legislation to hold municipally elected representatives accountable for violence and harassment. So with the attached motion that was issued by AMO calling on for government legislation on this issue, the Women That Say No are requesting the motion to include the communication that this legislation be prioritized for the fall of 2023, given the urgency of this issue. And we are asking that a letter expressing support for the motion be sent to the Premier, local MPPs, municipal affairs, AMO, and local municipalities. So I have placed that motion on the agenda if council is willing to support it. Also am flexible with moving that to another meeting because the attachment wasn't able to open either.
Thank you for that update. I'd actually prefer to defer that simply because I couldn't open the attachment to read more fully. And I would like to state that I do believe this township has most of that covered, but I would be willing to ask if that's not the case. And again, are they asking for a province-wide code of conduct, and which doesn't exist? I'm unaware of
I think the code of
province.
conduct exists, but I think they're looking for more specificity
In it.
when it comes to council behavior in the workplace, because we're here
Okay.
in their workplace. And I think to your point, our council code of conduct is applicable. The CAO can definitely
Sure.
speak to that. I know that we've all been versed on it.
Mhm.
And the expectations of our behavior at the council table, whether it be with individuals from the public or the staff, is just that, is respectful and within. But I think that this is looking to strengthen the expectation of behavior. Go ahead.
Thank you, your worship, and through you, I am happy to provide council with additional information about Bill 5 as well to be included on the next agenda.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to in the least be argumentative. I just like to read it myself. Thank you.
Okay, so this motion that's on the floor is for information items to be received and filed, and not, there's no indication of putting forward a support for the letter at this point, so we can bring that back with direction to staff at the subsequent meeting. Is that great? Okay. Okay, so any other comments in regards to any other information items? Oh, sorry, I have Councillor Lackey and then Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, worship, and through you, 9.5 with the agricultural with the United Counties. It's good to see that they've got some of these lands adjusted as far as amendments made. My question is, as far as communication to specific landowners, if there is a change on some of these lands, is there a mechanism to which they will be notified?
My understanding is that they're letting everybody know about the consultation process, and affected landowners would be notified at that point. And Madam Planner, I'm not sure if I'm misspeaking here, but I don't believe they're necessarily notified of a change, but they're notified that there could be a change.
That's correct. So it's important that individual landowners check through the online mapping tool and participate in the process and provide any comments that they have directly to the county.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up, will we as a township communicate that through our newsletter, through our email notifications?
I know that I've put it out in social media. I believe it's also been on the township social media.
It's been on the township social media a few times. We can push it a couple more times. There's a public session this week as well, so we can put out the notification
I
regarding
think
that
that
as
would
well.
be pretty. Okay. Okay, so Councillor Maybe and then Councillor Fody, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Mine is about 9.5 also, but more goes back to Director of Planning, is how this Bill 23 is impacted by this new survey being done, and whether there's any other areas that are going to be re-looked at the map, because we did know that during the official plan, there were some things that were marked as one thing and they aren't. So didn't know whether it's just agricultural land they're talking about and how Bill 23 is impacted mainly. Thank you.
Go ahead. Through you. So this review is just the agricultural land review. In terms of Bill 23, that doesn't directly impact this, but there are other potential provincial changes ongoing right now. In particular, the new provincial planning statement that could potentially allow severances on agricultural lands and designated agricultural lands, which is a significant shift in policy direction. So there's a number of moving parts at this point in time.
Councillor Fody, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, on the same vein, I'd like to revert back to, excuse me, 9.3 as well. With the agricultural mapping, I think Councillor Lackey covered more or less the question I was going to ask, like how do disputes get resolved and through what process, but we'll likely have that come out in due time. Thank you. With regards to going back to 9.3, just for clarification, does anybody know that this motion come through as a result of a vote down by the province recently, or would they just happen to overlap?
Go ahead.
Through your worship, yes, it was voted down by the government on May 31st.
All right. Personally, I was disappointed in that the province chose to go that way as a majority. Some of the reasoning was that you can voice your opinion on election day. the unsaid part of that is we can't say what needs to be said on a code of conduct prior to election day and identify certain individuals as to their poor or negative code of conduct. And I think the members of provincial parliament need to realize that. I'm sure they do know it. But I was disappointed, very disappointed to think that a code of conduct of all things wouldn't have been upheld by the members of our provincial legislation. Thank you.
Any other comments about any other information items? Okay, so the motion still stands that the information items be received and filed, made by Councillor Fody and seconded by Councillor Maybe. All those in favor of the motion? All those in favor, or all those opposed? And we're carried. Okay. Next item on the agenda. So I would ask that Councillor Lackey leave the room, which he is doing currently. And then I'll read the motion and go forward. So Councillor Lackey has left the room and the motion comes forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe. This is a long one, so please bear with me. That council directs staff to proceed with amendments to the administrative monetary penalty bylaw and associated bylaws to implement increased fines for second and subsequent offenses to address concerns identified by the public regarding noise, property standards, and safe properties, to address survey input received regarding short-term rentals. And that the staff be directed to increase the fines in the noise bylaw to provide greater cost recovery for the addition of evening and weekend enforcement, and that the staff prepare communication materials and update the township's website with information regarding short-term rentals and bylaw enforcement to raise awareness regarding bylaw enforcement and how to report concerns to the township for enforcement. And that, notwithstanding bylaw 21-039 being a bylaw to establish a procurement policy for the township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands, council authorizes staff to amend the existing contract for the services of Frontenac Municipal Bylaw Enforcement to include enforcement for calls regarding noise outside of township business hours, and that the costs incurred for the bylaw enforcement contract be funded from the bylaw enforcement operating budget, and that the staff continue to monitor the number of bylaw enforcement complaints received by the township and report back to council in Q4 2023 regarding the number and type of complaints received regarding short-term rentals and actions taken with any updated recommendations regarding regulating, monitoring, or enforcement of short-term rentals. Just want to make sure that was the end of it. Okay, discussion and motions on the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Grau.
Thank you. And through you, your worship, I'm happy to see that we've included after hours, if you will, weekends and so on, enforcement. And my question would be, I'm assuming these folks are experienced at this because it would be weekends, and I can see things getting a little challenging if it's a party on. And would we also be involving, let's say a complaint is made, would they be visiting this address, said address? Would they take police protection with them to said address? Because it's going to be a little different than 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Through you, in speaking with Frontenac Municipal Law Enforcement as well, I've been speaking with Frontenac Township, who's also doing the same process right now.
Okay.
What they're doing with Frontenac Municipal Law Enforcement is they will attend to verify that there is in fact a noise violation. They will make record of it. They will record and document it. But if it is something that needs some interference or some involvement, that would be escalated to the OPP. Given that we would likely have a single bylaw enforcement officer out on their own, we're not going to put anybody in a situation that could be a health and safety concern. That's the same approach that's being taken in South Frontenac. So they're prepared to do that. The process is already established.
Okay, so they'd be following up. Thank you. They'd be experienced at that. And a record would be made, because if we're going the route we are with our increase in monetary penalty, and I noticed it's only for noise bylaw, would there be similarly parking infractions or what others, anyway, parking comes to mind, or is just noise going to be the big one at this time?
Through your worship, at this point, it would just be noise. Our parking bylaw
Okay.
needs work. And if there's parking infractions, ideally, they would be addressed during business hours.
Mhm.
Again, some of this comes through education in terms of how to report a bylaw violation. If
Okay.
there's a parking violation and somebody contacts the township office and can provide us with photos and documentation to show what's happening, that's enough for staff to follow up on outside of the occurrence actually happening.
And finally, fire. Personal experience would say that people can get a little out of hand in starting a fire. The way they start the fire, using accelerants, et cetera, if they're inexperienced, so on. Would the public be encouraged to contact the fire department? Or if there weren't, if they didn't have a permit and they weren't using the on-call system, the neighbor or whatever would not know that necessarily. But if it was viewed as getting a little out of hand, who might we be phoning? Thank you.
Through your worship, the standard now is if it comes through Brockville Dispatch, myself or one of my chief officers attend. If we get on scene and it's more than we can deal with on our own, we're calling in the fire department itself and also OPP. We've certainly had OPP on multiple calls with us, so.
Thank you.
Councillor Fody, go ahead.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I want to thank the staff for condensing a large volume of material down to a handful of paragraphs to achieve what we're trying to achieve. In the sense that we're keeping it simplified, we're pinpointing with accuracy what it is we're aiming to achieve and getting the message across to those who create the infractions. My question, and I should have asked this at a previous meeting, the OPP has been called in a number of times in the past to deal with noise. Is that still prevalent if need be? I'm thinking of the weekend calls, or better still, as Councillor Grell alluded to, the after sunset crowd, if you will. Are the OPP still there if we need them?
Through your worship, the bylaw reference guide we prepared last year clearly indicates that if there are complaints or concerns outside of normal business hours with respect to noise, to contact the OPP. That being said, the OPP are also stretched in terms of their resources. So absolutely, the OPP are still there. And if there is a concern that is outside of business hours, even with our enforcement, you could still report to the OPP as well as to the township. And that'll be part of our education materials that we put out there. As it sits right now, if there is a concern that's sent to the OPP after hours, they will typically follow up with us early the previous week to provide us with the information if there has been an incident over a weekend.
Good, thank you. And a follow-up, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also wanted to thank you for condensing this, not only in material and volume, but to time, that we'll take a look at this in the fourth quarter. So we're keeping the scope narrow. And should we have made wrong decisions one way or another, we still have time to pivot and correct it and move on. Thank you.
I think it really comes down to the education piece, to be perfectly honest. I think that some homeowners have felt helpless and not knowing who to call or who to contact, and we can definitely do a better job in helping them find that path, so that in the future, if they're faced with noisy neighbors, either transient or otherwise, maybe even some regular occurrences, that they can actually reach out to the township or whoever happens to be on call to actually enforce that. So, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to the planner. I know we talked about the increased fines, and last week or the last meeting you talked about the base amount, but has there been any indication on how that will escalate on subsequent incidents for that particular property owner?
Through you, I've looked at a couple of different examples. Some municipalities go right to a doubling of the fine for second offenses. There was one municipality I found that had a tiered approach where it was a first offense is say the first offense is $100. If there's a second offense within the same calendar year as the first offense, then it automatically doubles to the second. So it would be a $200 fine. And then if there's a third offense within the same calendar year, then it automatically goes up and triples and stays at triples should there be subsequent offenses. And if it continues, then there's got to be another means of enforcement to address the matter. So I need to do more review on that, and I'll be bringing a report back to council with more information regarding what approach is recommended.
Just as a follow-up, if I may, Madam Mayor, is the cost for a rental of one of these units? I've not done it myself, so I'm just curious, what is the type of costing for maybe the said cottage that we've talked about for a weekend? It's got to be way more than what our fine is going to be. And that's kind of where I'm leaning, is that amount of money that they're making for it at that rate, and the cost of the fine may not be sufficient enough to deter them.
Through your worship, the fine or the cost of the different types of units obviously varies depending on what it is. But just as an example, the recommendation in the report in front of you is that the base fine for a noise violation be increased to $200. If that's doubled or tripled, that adds up. And if there's multiple violations in a short period of time, it's going to add up, and that can be levied against both the person that's occupying the property as well as the landowner. Now, in terms of recouping costs that aren't paid, it's much easier to recoup it against the landowner. If it's just a tenant, we don't have any mechanism to go after it the same way. But that's something we need to look at in more detail and bring a further report.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Jameson. Is your microphone on?
Am I there?
You're there now.
I'm there. So your worship, what I'm not quite following is that at some point we may review the fines, but the question is that going to be in the context of fines and fees and so on when we look at those in the next budget cycle? That's my question.
Through your worship, no. My hope is to bring forward the amendment to the noise bylaw as soon as I can get it, either July or August. I'm not certain at this point, my timing on that. The rest of the amendments, I'm hoping to have forward again, similar to that timeline. It's just a matter of sitting down and looking at workload at this point in time when we can bring it forward, but it's definitely a priority.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. We'll ask Councillor Lackey to come back in the room. Okay, so next item on the agenda is, sorry, I think I flipped the page here. 10.2 planning report SR-122-23 request to permit access to 08-12-812-015-1522, sorry, 15200 over Township Road allowance in concession 1 between lot 8 and lot 9 at the end of Beaver Road, applicants Emily and Garrett Dillman. So the motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Fody, that the council approve the bylaw attached to planning report SR-122-23 to authorize the use of the township road allowance in concession 1 between lot 8 and lot 9, located at the end of Beaver Road, and to make improvements to said road allowance to access the property identified by roll number 08-12-812-015-15200, and that the applicants be responsible for the construction costs and maintenance of the access road where it is located on an unopened road allowance, tongue twister, and that the applicants enter into an agreement with the township to regulate the use of the portion of the unopened road allowance subject to the said application in a form satisfactory to the township legal counsel, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, worship, and through you. I should know the answer to this question, but sometimes circumstances change. Is this to the planner? Is this something that we're now doing? Because I know we've turned down the use of our unopened road allowances for property access in the past. So is this something different?
Through your worship, no, this isn't something different. Each situation is brought forward and looked at in the context of the official plan policy. So there is an official plan policy framework that's reviewed in the staff report for this application. In looking at this property, it is somewhat unique in that there is actually a road allowance. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see it. The road allowance in front of the property. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to share screen. It terminates in front of this property and doesn't really provide any access to others. It's just coming, here we are. So there is a road allowance that goes to this. This property could not be accessed in any other way because it's south of the 401. There is a significant amount of distance that will need to be improved to allow access for it, but it did meet all of the official plan criteria in terms of accessing this property. Now, the owner will be required to bring forward an application for zoning bylaw amendment to amend the property should they desire to develop it with a residential use. So that would be something else that would come forward to council. But just in looking at the official plan policy, I've got the criteria on the screen, but one being that it's necessary for the use. All other options have been exhausted and the use is the only option, and it is the only option to access this property. All work will be done at the applicant's expense. A survey of the road allowance may be required, which has been done. Adjacent landowners will be notified, which in this case was done, and there was no input received. And that the applicant would be responsible for the maintenance of the road to the satisfaction of the township, and agreements be entered into. So it's not something that we encourage. It's not something, there's a number of properties that we may not consider it for, where a private access along a road allowance would open up access for a number of different people. But in this situation, it's a little bit unique because this is the only way to get to this property, and it doesn't provide any access for any other properties.
Okay, satisfied with the answer? Okay. Any further comments? Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, probably to the operations director. The road, as it's going to be built by the resident, will it be made in the standard that which we wish our roads to be made? And secondly, the older part of the road, which has been there for about 100 years now, certainly may not meet that standard. So will there be some compromise in how it's constructed, as well as who actually maintains the road, as in the grading, the snow plowing? I would assume the town of Gananoque does, since it's you enter it from their property. So probably an agreement there. Thank you.
Thank you, through your worship. The driveway will be constructed, if I'm not mistaken, to the private lane standard. I think that's what we'd spoken of. It will not be constructed to a road standard, as it is a single entranceway off of our road allowance. The maintenance of the road leading to it is substandard for our current standard of road. And that is maintained by the town of Gananoque. We're not looking to upgrade the road leading to it. It's a single property. If it was a larger development, then we would look at the traffic impact and the requirements for the upgrade of the road. But given that this is a single family home, we don't feel the warrant is there for that.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? I see no hands up, so I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's carried. Next item is 10.3 Administration Report SR-119-23 Physician Recruitment, moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Fody. That the council approve the physician recruitment incentives in the 2023 budget as described in Administration Report SR-119-23, and that the funding for the 2023 budget be drawn from the Special Projects Reserve Fund. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, through you, I think congratulations, I think, to those who were involved, that our doctors and people on the group did a good job. I've seen a lot of money wasted on a lot of different things, and I think this is a very good opportunity for us. So I would definitely be in favor of supporting this to go ahead. If I may, through the members of the group, how does everybody in the group feel?
Do Councillor Jameson or Councillor Fody want to speak to this? Councillor Fody?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you in response to Councillor Lackey. The momentum was right there from the very first meeting with everybody involved. The doctors are definitely on board, and of course they have to be in this case. But the agenda was compiled from pretty much every direction of everybody there. And there's definitely an appetite to make this happen for a number of reasons. We have physicians in our township that may have already retired had they had somebody to step in and replace. Luckily for residents here, they've chose to stay on until somebody does step forward. As you can see on the agenda package, we're competing against virtually every other municipality in Ontario that have much larger budgets and thus wave a much larger flag to come their direction. I think we can hold our own with our lifestyle here. I mean, a traffic jam in this township doesn't even involve a traffic light, as I don't need to remind too many of the residents that live here. So that in itself, and I think our way of life and the people that live here will endure them to at least give it a trial run, and hopefully from there they'll step forward and stay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
Just want to add to that, I appreciate the hard work that our CAO put into crafting this approach, and much appreciated, because it is a bit of a quagmire on regulatory issues all over the province, and CAO Donaghy has done a really good job getting it into a plan that we can pursue. And the other thing is, we don't have to spend any money until we have to spend money. So it's not just dribbling out, it's strategic and it's focused. So I appreciate the CAO's input. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to say anything else, Mr. CAO? You're good? Okay, CAO is good. So we'll call the question on this. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. It is disappointing that it has come to the fact that municipalities need to get into this, but I am very much encouraged by the partnership by not only the medical centers that are located in both Gananoque, Sealy's Bay, and Lansdowne. They already work together well, and with the town of Gananoque and our municipal representatives, I'm very encouraged that we should be able to find somebody somewhere, and maybe more than one, that will come and plug the holes in the dam, if you will. So next item is 10.4, operations report SR-123-23 UCLG competition PW-2023-005 supply and delivery of petroleum fuel products and propane gas. Moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Fody, that council approve the award of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville UCLG tender PW-2023-005 to W.O. Stinson for the supply and delivery of petroleum fuel products, propane gas for a period of 5 years. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, is there a clause in there about if the prices increase too drastically and adversely even go down? Which would be nice if it did, but I don't see that happening. But we have had quite a fluctuation in fuel costs over the last 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. So it's a moderate price for sure. But is there anything else in there that might safeguard or increase in cost possibly?
Thank you. Through your worship. The pricing provided was on a specific day. So the pricing, when you're pricing fuel, it fluctuates from day to day. And that's why they pick a certain location, and it's called the rack price. So the rack price is the standard price. The rack is the distribution location, and it's the price at that distribution location. So all vendors that are getting propane, as an example, have provided a price at that specific location on that specific day. So everybody's, it's apples and apples instead of apples and oranges, because it can fluctuate from day to day, and one person could pick the 8th and one person could pick the 9th, and it could have dropped and it could skew the results as a result of that. So when they put the tender out, they did a really good job of this, actually, where they picked a specific location, they picked a specific date, and all of the vendors that put in their price was based on that. So as it goes forward, the price that we see here is on that specific day, and the prices that we pay will fluctuate from day to day as it follows what the the current rack prices as the market goes up and down. So it doesn't matter who provides our fuel, we're seeing the savings as a result of going through this competitive process because they have given us the discount based on that rack pricing. Okay.
25 cents a gallon was a long time ago, Councillor. Councillor Fody, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor maybe. When I read the package first time through on a rough draft, if you will, last Thursday evening, first thing I did when I got to the office Friday morning was compare the rack price on that date. It is accurate.
Any further comments or questions in regards to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Just want to make a note. There are a number of people online and we have a couple people in the gallery. This is a council meeting. I noticed that just now that there is a hand up, but it is committee of the whole where we take input and comment. Generally speaking, we don't at council meetings. So I do apologize that I've passed by you, but it isn't our practice that we involve. So please don't be slighted by that. That's just standard procedure. So I'm just acknowledging that. I don't want anybody to think that anybody's being ignored at this point. So the next item is operations report SR-124-23 Centennial Park gazebo. And the motion comes forward, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson. The council authorized staff to proceed with public procurement of the supply and installation of shade sails. I'm not going to say that 3 times quickly, in place of the construction of a gazebo in Centennial Park as was approved in the 2023 capital budget. And that the council authorized the design requirements for the public procurement reflect sale plan 2 and shaded seating area as described in operations report SR-124-23, and that the funds allocated under the 2023 capital budget for the gazebo project be reallocated to the shade sale project. So the motion is on the floor up for discussion. I have Councillor Fody, then Councillor Kelman, and then Councillor Maybe. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to our Director of Operations. Is there an anticipated time frame for these to be up? Are they easy? From what I've read, they seem to be easy to put up. Are they easy to install? And my second question is, what time frame or hours involved is it to our staff to take these down and erect them both fall and spring? Thank you.
Thank you. Through your worship. For the initial construction, the time frame for this compared to a gazebo would be drastically reduced. The construction of the gazebo would be the physical construction as well as the permitting required through the planning development department. Whatever else is involved with that. In terms of this, the posts, they're screwed down into the earth. They're earth screws, and then the posts actually sit down inside of the screw. They say they could have them installed in 1 day. In terms of I believe that you just click them in and tension them up to get them set to where they're supposed to be in order to be at the right tension. They are a bit higher. They're the lowest one for these is 10 feet in the air for obvious reasons. We don't want to have vandalism and those types of things. And then for the time frame at the end of the season, I think we'd extend it until snow flies, put it up when snow's done, and have it down when the snow is coming again. So that's sort of what we're looking at for.
Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Follow up, please. I think you misunderstood or I didn't explain well enough the time. I'm talking about the time incurred to actually physically take them down and put them back up. Is it a reasonably short process, I assume?
Yes, I think you just click them in and tension them up and they're in place.
Are you asking if we award the contract, how long it would take to get them erected?
No.
Oh, okay.
It says in the packet that our staff will take care of taking them down before inclement weather in the winter and putting them back up early enough in the spring. And I assumed from what I read, it was a simplified process as opposed to taking 8 members of staff 3 days to do on either end.
Sure.
This would also be in line, for comparison's sake, to the waterfront stage on Joel Stone Park and Gananoque, that backdrop, if you will, they have over their waterfront stage. If you haven't seen that, it'd be similar. Theirs is one large piece.
I think the one in Gananoque is quite different, but what you, I've seen pictures of it. Rockport has them on the Rockport dock. I've seen them at Prescott Golf and Country Club, and they seem to be very effective ways to give shade and some rain relief, for a gentle rain, maybe not a sideways rain, but that's, I don't think a gazebo does much help when an open-sided gazebo is much helpful when the rain is coming in so hard that whether it's a sail or gazebo, but nonetheless, and the surface area, we can achieve a slight bigger area of coverage if we go with the sails versus the gazebo, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I have Councillor Kelman, then Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship, and for you. I'd first of all like to thank the director for researching a very innovative product and coming up with this alternative concept. I actually think it's a wonderful concept and a product in terms of appearance, sustainability. I think it would be wonderful, as we already have it in one other area in the township, to have some uniformity in our parks across the township. That's long term. The consultation that we did within the community was definitely, the majority was in favor of this option as opposed to a wooden structure. However, I will say there was also a lot of apathy, they didn't really care either way. They didn't know if anything was needed. They just wanted something there so people would stop talking about it. And it was informal consultation. And I think that has upset some people, a minority, but some people who are very invested in this project. And I feel that my concern is that a comment was also made that we don't need more shade in that park. There's lots of trees. There's also a full-size pavilion in that park. So my concern is that we are spending this money just to spend the money and say it's done. And what goes in, while it may look very nice and certainly perform the function that the TP performed, maybe there is a better way to spend the money and something that will better benefit the park. And I do feel that given the reaction in the community, that it is probably a good idea to do some formal consultation, whether that's in terms of a community meeting or perhaps a survey or perhaps both. So though unfortunately it will delay once again installing anything in the park, my recommendation would be that we delay approving this project at this time.
Councillor Jameson, do you want to weigh in on this before we go down that path, if that is the recommendation of Councillor Kelman?
It pains me, Your Worship. I think the sale solution is just great. So I'm not disagreeing with Councillor Kelman. I think we're on the same page. This is a litany that has gone on for years. And we're being trolled as well. And same trolls have been going after us for a year with respect to the teepee. So you get to the point where the original gazebo plan was through a consultation process and was decided, and we budgeted. And of course, then we all know that, Your Worship, that COVID hit and the shutdown, and that gazebo, I guess, just about tripled, if not more, in cost. So we had to delay it. We've had to do all kinds of things. And so what I think is a modern, cheerful, practical, affordable response is not sitting well up there in the village. So my point of view is this: we should defer this whole thing and make this a part of the 2024 budget process, where we take a look at all the parks and we have a strategy for all of our parks with respect to this kind of shading, because not only are they more sustainable and affordable, they also provide a UV treatment. And I disagree completely with the notion that we don't need any shade in the park, but I'm talking about all the parks here. And I know that in Australia, they have been using these sail structures for many, many years because of the intensity of the heat and the sun. And guess what? The intensity of the heat and the sun here is on the way up. And we would be doing ourselves and our children and our grandchildren a great favor by getting them over the playground areas, by getting them in certain strategic areas that we can take advantage of their value in that respect too. So I think we need a plan for the entire township with respect to these. And I would suggest we defer this and ask staff to put this as part of the budget process for 2024. And let's look at the project and not concern ourselves with a gazebo or anything in that part this year. If people want to be consulted, they can be consulted through the process of the budget as we move through as a matter of course. Thank you.
Okay. So we've now heard from two members, both from the ward where this is to be erected, that they'd like to see this deferred. So I've now got two people asking for a deferral, so I'll put that on the table. So Ms. Kelman and Mr. Jameson. So the motion to defer is on the table. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Does anybody want to speak to or against that? Councillor Fody?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I thought, like Councillor Jameson and Councillor Kelman had stated, this is a great idea to revert back to a discussion about the TP. My honest response on the TP, if it was such a great idea to keep it, why wasn't it addressed on many previous councils and years over the years to maintain the structure before it got to the stage of rot that it was found to be in, I think, 2019. And you can't leave a structure until it is of zero value as far as safety and whatnot to go at it and maintain it. Case in point was the dome down at the Escott site. We just agreed at the last meeting that that needs to come down because it's going to be an extravagant amount of money to maintain it. The TP is no different. But I'll take the lead of the councillors from Ward 2. If they wish to defer this, I will back them. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So yes, that TP, I was one of the councillors who went out there and said it needs to come down immediately because it was in dire need. Now, going back to the sales for a quick minute here, I noticed that the color actually mimics what the TP color may have been at one time, and that sales are very prevalent within more of the GTA area because you can see a lot of the outcroppings of the new businesses or different things. They have sales up all over the place. So it is a really big thing and it is good. And I'm all for it. And it is inexpensive, easy to put up and down, and works very well. And the only other thing is possibly, I know the blue was what was there, but what if it was multicolor just as an option? But deferring it is also, you know, as we've heard, maybe a better thing to move forward to looking at more areas within our township that could benefit from this type of product. Thank you.
Any other comments speaking for or against the deferral? If not, I'll call the question on deferral. All those in favor of the deferral? All those opposed? And the deferral is carried. So thank you for the input. Both councillors from Ward 2, but to your point, Councillor Jameson, and certainly no insult to our Director of Operations. The thought about how this solution may be better suited for more of our park spaces is very interesting to me, because when you talk about protecting kids playing on equipment and what have you, perhaps over top of jungle gyms and what have you, that's something I hadn't considered. So I look forward to a more fulsome discussion about how we might be able to provide more. Councillor Fody, you need to add something?
Thank you, Your Worship. Your very words made me think not only to the kids, but the structures themselves. I mean, UV rays will break down these structures quicker. We all know that. Any access to the outside elements, but point well said by yourself that, you know, if we can get these structures covered throughout the township and particular playgrounds and young kids, it's likely a great idea. Thank you.
It's the one behind the fire chief. Fire chief, can I ask you to put down the blind just so that I'm not blind? Please, thank you. Sorry.
Sorry, my.
No, it's that one.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, it is that one. Oh, that's much better. Thank you. Okay, so the next item is operations report SR 126 23 winter maintenance and planning. Moved by Councillor Fode, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that council authorize staff to proceed with the proposed reconfiguration of the winter control plow routes as described in operations report SR 126 23, that the council authorized staff to enter into an agreement with the township of Front of Young to provide winter control services for a trial period for the 2023-2024 winter season. And the council authorized staff to hire one full-time operator, one on a temporary basis for the 2023-2024 winter control season. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Kelman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. First of all, I'd like to once again commend the director for coming up with some really innovative solutions and doing a really interesting cost analysis. As someone who is often on our township roads early in the morning with a busload of children, when the student transportation of Eastern Ontario has made the wrong call on whether school buses should go out that day, I am particularly appreciative that this recommendation would allow for a second plowing of the roads on a regular basis in one day. I will tell you, February 21st, 2022 was one of the scariest days of my life. We were sent out despite weather warnings. The snow started just as I was finishing my high school route. I actually refused for the first time ever to drive the second portion of my route, as did another driver who has been driving for 40 years. And it was the first time she'd ever done it. But we still had to drive the high school kids home in the afternoon. The snow had stopped, but the roads could not be plowed again. And school buses don't have great traction, and you're going across some roads that are 3 or 4 feet thick with snow. It also addresses drifting, which is a real concern on a lot of roads in our township. If you can get those trucks out for a second round, it just will be a huge help. So I think this is a really spectacularly innovative and showing partnership with our sister community as well. So I thank you for coming up with these ideas.
Okay, Councillor Garrell, and then do I have anybody else? Councillor Fode.
Thank you. And through you, Your Worship, could we get an overview again of the relationship between Front of Young and us and what it means to each municipality in joining up? I appreciate the reconfiguration of the routes. What does it mean to Front of Young?
Thank you, through Your Worship. For Front of Young, this means that they have 2 tandem trucks currently that need to be replaced to the tune of about $500,000 per truck. This reduces that, where they now have 2 trucks that they can push them along a little bit further and see how this works before determining what to do next. So they're looking at reducing from 2 tandem plow routes down to 1 tandem plow route and having 2 trucks available for that. If they have a reduction in staff currently, so for them, before they go and add that additional staff member, they can review what their requirements are and go from there. So that's the benefit for them.
And in return, what do we receive as township?
Thank you, through Your Worship. Currently we've found that our inefficiency is as a result of having to come back and get sand, as an example, at this yard.
Yeah.
This is our furthest east location for sand. For us, we continue a little bit further on one route, and we're able to retrieve sand from Front of Young in Canetown.
Yep.
And then finish our route on the way back. Additionally, we will be compensated for providing the service for them. We had agreed on $165 an hour, and that rate was based on the Ministry of Transportation fleet route or fleet costing. We also considered the addition of having the plow equipment on there, so there'd be coverage for that, as well as the time for our staff and some administration time as well. So we've considered all of the costs required as a result of that.
Very good. Thank you. And we would be considering this for one season, Dave, the upcoming season 23-24.
Yes.
That's
thank
the
you, through you.
motion.
So this is a trial period for the winter season of 2023-2024. see how it goes and revisit it after that to see if it made sense for both municipalities or if we should revert back to something else.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I agree with my colleague, Councillor Kelman. A lot of lay people don't understand or realize the regulations involved in transportation at all levels of a restriction of a 13-hour workday. And as been stated by our plow trucks not being able to, they put in whatever the number was, 8 or 8.5 hours. There's nothing left to go back out, or at least a partial, which they do. It's not that they stay here parked and wait out the other 3 or 4 hours. But this will change, I think, the snow plowing and address a lot of the problems. Drifting, you're absolutely right, is one of the key components. If the plows can go out and expedite, maybe not need to put any more sand, but just knock those drifts back. Predominant west wind, the north-south roads are the enemy. But this is a good trial basis. I think we're not tied in on anything concrete for definitely not any length of time. But more importantly, we'll just get more bang for the buck, if we will, out of our snow plows and our staff as to what they can accomplish on a winter storm day. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think we might be setting a template. And it bodes a question. Did the Front of Young reach out to Kitley to do something similar on the other side?
Thank you, through your worship. I'm not sure if Front of Young had reached out to Elizabethtown Kidley, but I know that they had spoken with the county and they had also spoken with Tackaberry Construction to providing service.
Okay, thank you.
This is a result of me butting in. I overheard the mayor from Front of Young talking about approaching the county and approaching Tackaberry's to help with this challenge. And I said, hey, maybe we should talk. And Dave, our director of operations, was very gracious to look at it. But I'd like to make a couple comments. I think that it can't be underscored enough that this helps us as much as it helps them. From the simple perspective that it gives us the opportunity to do a second run. We're not wasting a huge amount of time deadheading all the time trying to get material back and forth. We're not taking on another tandem truck, like we're not buying another piece of equipment to address this issue. We're just actually utilizing the equipment, which poses a bigger question. And I'll take a page from Councillor James's book. We need to do better about collaboration within the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, whether it be with the county or other neighboring municipalities. When a municipality of, I forget, 2,300 people, I could be wrong with about Front of Young, but their overall budget is $4 million. And if you talk about buying 2 new tandem trucks, the cost associated to the average taxpayer is extreme. When we have staff here that are literally deadheading, which means they've picked up the plows, they've got nothing in the hopper, and they're coming back to fill up, when we could be partnering, doing just this, and allowing us to get another turn in to make the roads that much safer. I think that, having the trial basis makes sense for both of us, but it's a win-win situation, which is what you look for in all partnerships. So there, said my piece. Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. I should have mentioned when I had the opportunity, that rate of 165 an hour is bang on for the equipment, the fuel, the employee and such. If anybody's wondering how that number plays out, it's accurate. It's very accurate. The transportation industry has that number down pat, and it fluctuates, mind you, especially with the cost of equipment now.
Well, and we were paying those employees anyway, because they were here and deadheading. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Just want to say thank you to Director of Operations Holiday for, this wasn't kick an idea around for a week and come up with brand new route plans. The amount of work and analysis that went into revamping the snowplow routes was, well, I think we talked about it in December last year. And so this has been months and months and months. And I remember Dave coming into my office showing me pages of, okay, now they'll turn right on this road and then they'll go to this road. And then to do the analysis and finally come up with routes that the savings in time of hours for a pass are quite remarkable. So well done to Dave and his team for all the hard work on that.
Any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Cumlin.
Thank you again, your worship, through you. I just wanted to add along those lines, I think if this plan is approved and this information is available on our website, it just makes us more, transparent to the public. You can look and see in what order the roads are going to be plowed, and it can give you an idea. And I think the more information we can give all of the residents, the better. Thank you.
Fair enough. Okay, I'll call the question on this. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. I think it sets a great precedent for collaboration and cooperation. So next item is 10.7. So we'll do this one and then we'll take a short break, and the two councillors will vacate the room and stay out on break. Okay, I'll do that after I'm done this one. Okay. Operation support SR-127-23 La Rose Bay Road property acquisition. Moved by Councillor Kalman, seconded by Councillor Grau, that the council direct staff to proceed with the acquisition of the parcel of land from 221 La Rose Bay Road for the purposes of constructing a cul-de-sac turnaround for operational purposes. That council authorized the transfer of $25,000 from the operations contingency fund for survey, legal, and construction of the cul-de-sac. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, your worship, through you to our director of operations. Does this land purchase just involve one landowner?
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, it does.
Okay, so it should be a pretty simplified experiment, or I shouldn't say experiment, maybe experience would be a better way. Well, it makes sense. I mean, today's equipment, especially snow plows under adverse conditions, to have to do those 3-point turns that most vehicles would do. The drivers here, I'm sure, are doing a 6-point turn to get these units turned around in some locations.
Go ahead.
I just want to add just a little bit of understanding of what this location is. Where the home is being constructed at the end of La Rose Bay Road, the road drastically slopes down at about 15% past the house into what is a fenced and wooded area. So this actually provides a safe turnaround for our staff, where currently when I've been out to site with our lead hand, and I've been out with the manager of roads and fleet, and they said there's no way we're going down this hill. They're absolutely terrified of it, and I can understand why in the middle of a snowstorm or an ice storm. So when this concept came up, I met with the property owner, and then I took the lead hand out there, and I took the manager of roads out there, and I said, here's what we're thinking, here are what the grades will be to counteract that slope. And they're actually a little more comfortable with it at that point. I wouldn't say that they're completely on board, but they're more comfortable for sure, because it does provide a safe breakaway zone.
Hopefully it doesn't break all the way down into the trees and the fence line. Councillor Grau, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the report, Dave. I have a number of questions here. This La Rose Bay Road project goes back, the housing goes back to June 2021. There was a planning meeting. There were several objections raised at that time from people up in Charleston Lake about the building of this house. So when I go back and look at the records, 221 really is, pardon me, and another thing that happened would be planning report June 19th, planning report SR 127-23. The idea was that they needed access across one of our township rights of ways. We gave them that. When I look at the map here, my question is about distances and who is responsible for what, because the house has been built well to the east of your proposed cul-de-sac, number one. That's what I believe from everything I have read. So therefore it leaves a very long private lane from La Rose, and yet the report would kind of indicate that the house is right there on the road. It is not. It's a very long way on what will become a private lane. As I read the report, I was thinking, how obligated is the township to plow another 1.5 kilometers of road for one house that is going to have additionally have private lane plowing of significant distance. So to me, it was kind of a mishmash. What it looks like what we want is a turnaround, simple, plain and simple. But there was a lot of verbiage in there about the rights or whatever, the needs of 221 LaRose, which I don't understand why they even exist. If we want a cul-de-sac, say so.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, we do want a cul-de-sac. This was presented to us by the property owner. So their entranceway does actually come out right at where the cul-de-sac is. That is their entrance
For what?
for their home that is directly to the east on the opposite side, that kilometer-long driveway. Their access to our open road allowance. So it is an open road allowance that runs on LaRose Bay Road, separate from the unopened road allowance where we have an agreement with them that runs directly north-south.
So 221, if I can use the example here of the unopened road allowance.
So the unopened road allowance is the red.
Yeah, well, the house is to the east of that, is it not?
Correct. But the entranceway to actual LaRose Bay Road is right where the cursor is currently.
Sure.
So that is an open road allowance. So
So
when
why are we obligated to plow that?
we are currently obligated to plow to that location because we do not have a bylaw that states that we do not plow to that location.
How would we deal with Riverview Drive? Riverview Drive in Rockport, we don't plow that.
Riverview Drive is a private lane though. On an
Private
unopened
lane,
road allowance.
not according to this township, it's not.
Yes, no, it is.
It's private lane,
Yes.
okay. So it's clear that we're obligated to plow for one house, spending money for one house that they sought to build there over a year ago. And we're now confronted with spending money on a road for one house. Is that the way I understand this?
Currently, that
I'm
is,
not happy about that.
that is correct.
Okay.
So following the winter control plan map, if I can speak, following the winter control map that I provided you, my next step is to provide council with a winter control plan, which will outline all of the plow routes and all of our application rates. And following that, we're going to provide a list of our partially maintained roads. So roads like LaRose Bay Road that we plow to a certain point, which then we would bylaw that we plow until that certain point. And anything beyond that would have to get approval through council to go beyond that to plow, where we currently don't have that bylaw in place.
In the 221 LaRue's SR 127-23, it goes in to say, if I wanted to bring it up here, it says no expenses will be incurred by the township. That's one of the reasons I voted for it in the first place. See if I can bring it up. Whereas the unopened road allowances remain township, ... easy for use. All other options have been exhausted. No money. Applicant will be responsible for maintenance of the road to the satisfaction of the township as established in agreements. I'm confused once again by conflating 221 LaRue's with this idea that we have to plow and build a cul-de-sac on 1.3 kilometers of road.
I'm going to recognize the planner at this point. She might be able to add something to the discussion.
Thank you. Just for clarification, so I understand, because I think you were reading from the staff report for the road allowance.
Yep.
That the private road coming in from LaRose Bay Road, which extends around the bay and up to the house, that won't be subject to any township maintenance. That's a driveway into the property, and that the reference to the improvements and maintenance of that is all directly on the landowner, and that the current report is with respect to LaRose Bay Road and not that laneway leading up to the house.
So just for further clarification, Councillor Corral, your question is why do we maintain La Rose Bay Road to that point, period?
Period.
That's the question that's being asked. And have we been doing that up until this point? Yes or no?
We have been maintaining up to that point seasonally,
Seasonally, so not in the winter.
not in the winter currently, correct?
So I guess the other question I would ask is there opportunity for further development on this road that we would see in the future that would help offset the costs associated with that, Madam Planner? Is there any other, I just don't know if there's any other lots on this road or potential for development.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
There are existing properties that are developed with residential uses, whether they're seasonal or year round or converted to year round at some point.
So there's currently other residences on the road, but they're seasonal at this point. correct?
I don't
Correct.
really, yeah, yeah.
And from where we currently provide winter maintenance to where we will be providing winter maintenance to is 1.3 kilometers of developable land, I think. Vacant land.
It's vacant land currently. So what we're really, the crux of it, to Councillor Gorell's point, is that we're asking to add 1.3 additional kilometers to the winter maintenance, or actually, yes, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, just want to be clear. And then Councillor Fody.
Oh, okay. Just one thing, want to make clear, 221 La Rose Bay Road is now a year-round residence.
Mhm.
So we have an obligation to maintain, correct?
Correct.
And, okay, well,
Councillor Fody, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Councillor Grell's brought up some real good points here. I have a question. What are we obligated to plow? How far down? Your wording was we currently maintain. What are we obligated to do?
We are obligated to provide service to the full-time residents that live on the road.
Right, but we have somewhere in our package here tonight that makes reference to in order to be, well, the roads grants that we're providing here later specifies in there to be considered lane association, if you will. It requires 2 or more residents on that road. We seem to be circumventing our own requirement for the roads grants for other people's private roads, but we're not applying it to our own. I've had some questions. I remember bringing one up here not too many months back about roads that are sparsely habitat and with 1 or 2 houses on a lengthy road that we're maintaining currently. And I asked if we could revert some of those decisions to not plow those roads because they appear to be private lanes in my eye. This one here, I'll change my question. Where is the last current residence on this road, and how far past that are we currently obligated to plow?
The last current residence is 1.3 kilometers from the end of the road.
Okay,
So up until this point, there were no fully like full season homes,
Right.
full-term residents living beyond that 1.3 kilometers, which
Right.
is why we provided that service to that location. So La Rose Bay Road is a public road. It's not a private road similar to the grants. It is a public road. It's on our listing as a public road from County Road 3 all the way to the end. And we had a permanent resident that lived 1.3 kilometers, which is why we provided that service. And now that we have a permanent resident that lives at the end, the expectation is that we provide that service to their homes.
So the main thing is that, just for my own clarification and maybe others, it was never a private road.
That is correct.
So
It was a partially maintained road.
it was a partially maintained road, and because of that, we have an obligation, once they meet planning and zoning and all of that, we wouldn't be able to preclude that. Is that, am I all I'm saying is we're in a bit of a catch-22 because we can't say no because it's even though it wasn't 100% maintained to the end, it still was a township road. So we couldn't necessarily say no to the development. Am I right, wrong, otherwise? Go ahead, Madam Planner.
The zoning bylaw requires frontage on a publicly maintained road for the issuance of a building permit. So this La Rose Bay Road is a publicly maintained road.
Councillor maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you can see, this map on here, which came with this package, the road that we actually looked after was the dotted lines that run kind of north and south. And that's the one that we did, which is very close to their new house. And that road comes all the way back around the bay to our public road in the red squares where they want that. But so I don't see like we're not maintaining their road by any stretch because their road that they have to plow looks to be about 3 kilometers long by this map. So I think it's a requirement. And as the Director of Operations did indicate that it is a public road, not a private road, and it's not their private road. It just gives them access to their private road. So.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Okay, so I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion at hand, go ahead. All those opposed? 2 opposing, it is carried. Okay, before we take a break, we need to have a motion come to the floor to appoint interim chair, as we do not have a duly appointed deputy mayor at this point. So the motion reads that council hereby appoints Councillor X as chair for an item for 9.8 operations report SR-128-23 private road grant program. So sorry, 10.8. Sorry, 10.8. So does anybody, can I do eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
A point of order, when we actually asked this question last year, it was alphabetical. So that whoever was going to fill in, it was going to be alphabetical on the list. So in my mind, that's
Councillor Fody.
Councillor Fody.
Okay, everybody, you're good with that? All you got to do is read the motion, ask for the discussion, call the question. Go ahead, Councillor Fody. Are you okay with letting your name stand for that?
Well, some clarity because I'm missing something on my agenda.
So
Quite
the
frank.
private road grant program, both myself and Councillor Jameson have to excuse ourselves due to a conflict of interest. So I have to appoint a chair in my absence, and you're alphabetical number 1.
Okay, clarity understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
So your duties, if you so choose to let your name stand, will be to read the motion, allow for the discussion, and then call the question. Okay. So I need a mover and a seconder to appoint Councillor Fody as the interim chair while we are out of the room. Okay, I've got Councillor Lackey and Councillor Maybe. I'll call the question. All those in favor of Councillor Fody, sacrificial lamb. Councillor Fody is abstaining. So here we go. And now we're going to take a break and then be back in 10 minutes. We'll give us 10 minutes, give a little bit. Thank you.